The Minister, the Ministry, and Me show is brought to you by Craftsman Home Inspections, LLC. Find out more at craftsmancolorado.com. Let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. 1 Timothy 5:17. Hey everybody, welcome to the 3M podcast, the Minister, the Ministry, and Me show. Thank you for tuning in and listening and giving your 5-star review on iTunes. Thanks for listening, guys. I know you don't have to. Some of you don't want to. That's why you don't. Anyways, today we just finished a series that we talked about practical ministry. It was called Practical Ministry. We had a 2-part series on that. And then today we're going to pick up a topic in the 3M book, the Minister, the Ministry, and Me book that you can just grab for free on jnwheels.com under the My Free Book tab. This is chapter 4, and it's called The Paid Minister. So we're talking about vocational ministry today and just throwing some thoughts out there for you. A lot of these things, this book was actually written by myself, intended to just provoke discussion. So if you have like a ministry team or you're interested in being in ministry full-time or serving in your church vocationally, these just kind of give you or a group of individuals or people something to talk about, something to discuss. And so they're really meant to provoke talking points on ministry. And so I hope you guys enjoyed our recent discussions we had Josh Reagan on the show. We had Ryan Ritchie Wilson on the show, and then we had brother Joel Wheelersburg on the show. He's my brother. So anyways, you can find out more about Calvary Reach. That's Pastor Joel's church. We attend that church, and we love it. It's a really small, simple church. It's a church plant in North Aurora. I believe the website is calvaryreach.org, so you can find out more there. And we'll have Joel on the show as well as Ryan in the future. And then I put it out there to Josh Reagan to tag team this upcoming series later this month called Spiritual Abuse and the Wolves Among Us, talking about this topic of spiritual abuse, which is really not very popular to talk about, though a lot of people have experienced it, I've come to find out, but no one really wants to talk about it. And so we're going to see if we can open up the conversation and talk about it. It just sounds pouty, doesn't it? I mean, spiritual abuse, and I think that's how people treat a lot of people who bring it up, is that they're just some pouty whiners. But we're just going to try to dialogue about it and kind of open some people's eyes to some of these things, and I'll really just help some of those people out there who are going through it to just know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay, when you've been hurt by people in the church, because it's really what it is. You're hurt by people, and but Jesus didn't hurt you. He loves you, and he'll be faithful to continue to carry you through in your walk with him. And so look to him. So we've got that coming up. Let's pick up on this topic of the paid minister on the 3M podcast. The paid minister. Okay, let me take a moment to specifically talk about being on staff at a church. Not all pastor, elders, and servants in the church are called to be a staff pastor or an assistant pastor on staff being paid. This requires your full commitment of time, energy, and flexibility. Your life will revolve around the church, inner and outer workings. For many, this is an awesome joy. And I should say to those called to this type of ministry, this is a great joy. Not everyone's called to this. I know people who are, and I know for myself, I'm not. I've done it. I don't really enjoy it. I enjoy serving as a lay leader and pastor and speaker or preacher in the church, and really doing things like this on my free time. Some are called to work a secular full-time job, raise their families, and serve in the capacity of lay pastors in their spare time. This is also a major sacrifice of time and energy, but I will say that it's not the same as working for a church. The volunteer at church has a set amount of time that he obligates himself to in service to the church, while the staff pastor commits all of his time to the needs of the church. He's always on call. There's no clocking in or clocking out, though both are called to be pastors with their lives all the time, wherever they may go, grocery store, work, etc. The staff pastor fulfills most all of his calling in or at the church and with the members or attendants of the church. He's called to assist his pastoral team and fulfill the needs of the church, not necessarily his every personal whim and desire. What might this look like? My experience of a typical work week in hours adds up to an average of 60 plus hours per week in fulfilling the needs of the ministry. This is not including those busy times around holidays, special events, outreach events, when even more time may be required. Does this mean that pastors should go home counting their hours and being impressed with their sacrifice? No, certainly not. The reason I share this with you is to give you an idea of what it can be like for staff ministers. I mention this to give you the opportunity to count the cost if it is your desire to be a staff pastor. This sort of commitment, it'll tax your body, mind, and spirit. That's why you need to be a spiritual person, constantly going to the Lord for your life's fuel and energy. It is very important that you guard your walk with Jesus and your love and commitment to your spouse and family. You should know when enough is enough. I'm not talking about punching the time clock. I'm talking about getting out of there at a reasonable time so that you can go invest in your most important ministries, the Lord and your precious family. Laziness happens. Like any workplace environment, Satan's going to tempt you with laziness. The temptation for some might be to work the system, taking advantage of the awesome freedom that full-time ministry provides. You weren't brought on staff to take unnecessary 2 or 3 hour lunch appointments or to figure out how to get more done in less time so you can surf the internet or check how many friends you have on Facebook. These things are a temptation and it's fun. I know, I get it. For a common person or a common workplace, but we're expected to crucify or mutilate our fleshly desires and temptations. We need to remain focused on the tasks at hand. We're here to help and make the most of our time, not hurt the progress of the ministry to our church and community. If you've got free time, then pray, study, seriously seek the Lord about how he might fill your time with new vision and service for his glory, or accomplishing those things that God's put on your heart, or go clean the building or parking lot or something like that. You were hired to serve people. People are your focus, not only during service times, but all the time. Be prepared for divine interruptions. Like I've heard it said before, be flexible. Don't lose your eagerness to meet the needs of real people because you're so consumed with material tasks. Flesh and blood people are always the focus. Stay on top of your weekly tasks so that you're prepared for those who walk through the doors with needs, or for those unexpected hospital visits or deaths. People need to be comforted, encouraged, and loved on. Jesus was about relationships and connecting with people face to face, so plan on meeting with people. Make room to get out of the office often to meet with people over lunch or coffee or for a walk and talk discipleship session. Have a barbecue at your house. Invite people into your home. You'll be filled with so much satisfaction in serving Jesus as he uses you to invest in seeing others' lives changed. And even some of these things can involve your family. You don't always have to leave your family to serve God, but you can invite people into your home. Building a community. Make time to enjoy these moments. Making time to enjoy these moments will require faithfulness and discipline in your work time and private world so that you can be all there in the moment of ministry. I'll just quickly and simply state how you invest in your personal life will affect how you minister to other people. So honor God all the time, especially in your private world. Be the servant's servant. Do anything and everything that needs to be done, from scraping gum off the pavement and cleaning toilets to leading small groups and filling the pulpit. And remember the awesome joy that it is to be saved and in the service of the King. You are truly blessed beyond measure to love Jesus and love his people by serving them daily. Let me give you some questions worth pondering. If you are a paid minister, did you know what to expect before you entered that role? I'd love to hear from you guys on this. In other words, did anyone prepare you for the life of full-time ministry? What advice would you give to an aspiring full-time minister? And with that, guys, that brings us to another conclusion of the 3M podcast. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on that topic. So feel free to drop us a note. You can find out how to contact me at jnwheels.com. So it's time for another segment of the ODG segment. Does that make sense? Another segment of the segment. This is where we get a word from an old dead guy from history. Today, the ODG portion of this podcast comes from Martin Luther. We are celebrating 500 years since the Reformation this year. And we're reading from something from Martin Luther as he began to discover the grace of God for himself. And so we talked about in our biblical theology podcast how Martin Luther was really struggling before he discovered the grace of God with keeping the faith. He even hated God at one point, he said, because he'd understand how he could keep every aspect of it. Then his Catholic faith, then it was the universal faith or the universal church. It was the church. But they taught so many rules and regulations, and he was just so in distress over the legalism of the faith. Here's a little excerpt from him being set free. Martin Luther says, "In the death of Jesus Christ on the cross, God had reconciled humanity to himself. Christ was now the sole mediator between God and man, and forgiveness of sin and salvation are effected by God's grace alone and are received by faith. What was required, therefore, was not a person's strict adherence to the law or the fulfillment of religious obligations, but a response of faith that accepted what God had done in the finished work of Christ. As such faith matured, it would lead to obedience based not on fear of punishment, but on love." And with that, that concludes another episode of the Minister, the Ministry, and Me show. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.